That was Michael Forsyth in the House of Lords, and if by magic the Conservative peer joins us now in the Daily Politics studio, welcome back. John Bakewell, of course, is still with us. You voted against extending the franchise to 16 and 17-year-olds for this referendum. Why?
Because I think if you're going to give the vote to 16-year-olds, you need to look at it for all elections and not do it on a piecemeal basis. And I also think that we need to decide what is the age of majority. I mean, 16-year-olds are not allowed to now even take a job full-time. They're not allowed to buy a pint of beer, all these arguments. So we need to look at the voting thing in the context of what's the right age of majority.
But the Prime Minister allowed a piecemeal change for the Scottish referendum.
Yeah, and I argued very strongly against it, and I said it would lead to exactly this kind of argument and row, and they said no, it wouldn't, and that's why we're now in this mess.
But you say you're against piecemeal. It seems to me, though, that if we were to say for general elections, for local elections, for elections to the regional and national parliaments, we would have votes for 16 and 17-year-olds. You would be against that?
Well, I think I would want to look at it in the context, are we still going to stop 16-year-olds from being able to buy a pint of beer, buy a packet of cigarettes, drive a motor car? They can only join the army with parental consent, and they're not allowed to fight till they're 18. All these things, and I think it needs to be looked at. What is the right age of majority across the board to get rid of these anomalies?
Where are you on this?
I voted for the 16-year-olds. I think it's an idea whose time is due. But I go along with what Michael says about looking at the whole situation. I think that's fine. The Labour peers have often suggested that we should have a constitutional convention so that all these issues can be set out and examined, and the government constantly refuses to do that.
But would you be in favour of 16 and 17-year-olds voting across the piece in elections?
Yes, I'm coming round to that idea. I think it's enormously important that we engage young people in the political life of this country. Some of them have shown a great interest when they had the Scottish referendum. If you take young people seriously and listen to their views, they respond seriously, and that will make a huge difference.
Except turnout among 18 to 21-year-olds is much lower than the average.
Well, yes, but that's, we're going through a change.
But it's been much lower for a long time, ever since it was introduced.
Well, the point is there's work to be done on engaging young people and stopping them being disenchanted with the political situation. Many adults are disenchanted with it, after all. And I think that can start. They have lessons on civic behaviour in classes now. They have lessons about how the country is run. They're invited to take it seriously, and more of them are doing so effectively in Scotland. Perhaps at 18 they fall away to some extent, but that doesn't mean that as a cohort they completely abandon the idea.
No, though it does mean as a cohort they tend not to vote, though they did in the Scottish referendum, that's for sure. And in the European referendum, 70-year-olds, 75-year-olds will get the vote, though they will not be living that much longer after the consequences of the vote. 16 and 17-year-olds will have to live with the consequences of this vote for the rest of their lives. Why shouldn't they have a say?
Well, because it's an argument about whether or not it's appropriate for people to have votes at 16, which, as I've already said, I think...
It's their future.
Well, I mean, if you take the Scottish example, we are in the absurd position that the Scottish government gave 16-year-olds the right to vote, but in April is going to introduce legislation that requires 16-year-olds to have a state-appointed guardian to make sure their parents are looking after them. So we're all over the place on this. Is it 16 or is it 18? And I think in Wales, 16-year-olds can vote in referendums on whether or not the Welsh Parliament can have tax-raising powers, but not for elections in the Welsh Parliament.
Well, fine, let's have a convention about it.
Well, yeah, fine,
Michael.
but you voted last night to make another piecemeal change in a bill which is about a referendum. And there's been ample opportunity to discuss this before. I think we need to get on with getting this legislation out of the way and deciding the question.
Isn't that the British Constitution is about piecemeal change? That's how it changes. That's how it survives. It's always gone through piecemeal change. Even when devolution was done to Scotland, it was piecemeal. The rest of England wasn't getting it. We did it bit by bit by bit. That's how an unwritten constitution works.
Well, it doesn't seem to be working terribly well, Andrew, because when devolution was introduced, we were told that it would be in order to stop the demands for Scottish nationalists for independence, and that hasn't worked out according to plan. So I think we need to have and all the parties, and by the way, I agree with them, all the opposition parties are saying we need to have a constitutional convention to look at the effect of all this piecemeal change and to get back to some
Will you do House of Lords reform in that convention too?
I think
because it is interesting that a bunch of people who haven't been elected are deciding who should be elected.
We all want reform.
Yeah,
the House of Lords.
Well, I agree with you, and that's why I think it was quite wrong for the House of Lords to vote as they did on this amendment last night, because the House of Commons has already decided this matter on a number of occasions, and surely it should be for the elected chamber to decide an issue as important.
Is that right, Joan Bakewell?
Well, it's very interesting because the House of Lords really constitutes the major opposition to the government at the moment. I mean, and it's in great form, as you witnessed, Michael.
Really? I thought Labour was the opposition. I thought it was your party was the opposition.
Well, the Labour people in the Lords defeated the government 21 times, and we're going strong in terms of opposing the government. That's what we're for. We're also for revising bills that come, as you know, to the Lords very badly drafted, and there's a lot of work to be done.
And your democratic mandate to do this is?
It's as the Constitution is there. It's arrived at piecemeal.
All right. We better leave it there. We're holding on to